And welcome back to MAAC League of Legends playoffs. As right before that break, we were talking about, Manhattan is that sort of top dog in this matchup, their second seed in the conference. And how does Fairfield take them down? We're talking about Drifter. And one thing that sort of stands out to me is the first time I saw Drifter, it was really in his element, was on Hecarim. And who's the best jungler in the game right now? It is Hecarim.
I would say that's a bit too much to say Hecarim's the best jungler currently. I'd say it's a strong pick. You still have to contest with picks like Jin Zhao. There was a nerf that came through. I'm not saying that Jin Zhao was not nerfed, but those nerfs aren't changing the game plan for Jin Zhao. They are affecting a bit of the power level within, in terms of how long the ultimate's going to last in a team fight. 1 less second, that is not and nothing. But in terms of the E cooldown going up by 1 second, that's like your Q is going to mitigate that, so 1 less block on that. It's a little bit. It affects clear speed minorly, but very minorly. So you're still going up against things like Jin Zhao, things like Lee Sin right now as well, very strong. So best, not so much. Very good, and we've seen it from them before for Grifter, and I would expect to see it again. Yeah, I'd say that's definitely on the table.
I definitely think that if you are Manhattan and you're targeting that jungle pool, get rid of, like the Lee Sin, the Hecarim, the Olaf. Force him onto something a little uncomfortable that you can't play through as easily, because we haven't seen many other, standout players from Fairfield, I think, outside of the jungler. It does feel like it is this more supportive style where they enable Grifter to sort of lead them forward. And if you force Grifter onto something like a tank, I feel that Fairfield's game plan can fall apart.
Yeah, definitely can start to fall apart. I still think there's a lot of opportunities in terms of playmaking you can do to carry in a game, especially from the jungle position. I think it's one of the reasons why jungle has had to be nerfed in terms of stats, XP, and gold they receive. It's because their ability to playmake around the map are just it's a little extreme in a lot of situations. People complain about mid roams a lot, and it's like jungler is just that 24/7. So, yeah, I think for Fairfield, playing in terms of having your jungler have the most amount of impact in the specific lanes you want them to, right? Because some lanes, we've seen from other teams, like they just sack it. They just go, okay, this lane's going to be a weak side, we're going to leave them weak side, and we're not going to play for them and just hope they survive on their own.
Yeah, definitely. As we've got a peek at the bracket so far, of course, we saw Niagara in their show match against Ryder due to some roster issues from Ryder, but we still saw how Niagara continues to struggle with things like closing out games. But one thing that I did like in the Ryder series was the red cane that came out from Sir Mumu, and it sort of showed the strength of how well that pick can scale out and how difficult it can be to deal with. So I'm wondering if we might see Kane come into play. I think some of his worst matchups, that Jin Zhao being a little bit nerfed, not being as high priority early on, may open the door for some more Kane shenanigans.
No, I mean, if there's a Lee Sin in the game, typically Kanes don't like that. Lee Sin, very mobile, fast clearing jungler that can also duel you as much as possible, as we are going to be getting into lobby very shortly. But again, that's something Kane doesn't like. But I will agree that Kane is very strong right now, especially outside of the top level of play. I think a lot of people get fixated on what is happening, including casters. We get fixated on what's happening in pro play, LCS, LEC, LCK, LPL, that kind of stuff, when in reality, for a lot of, especially in collegiate, you can have these picks that are very strong solo queue champions that also work out in these more coordinated fashions, because you can still have the upsides of them without the extreme min-maxing that does occur in those pro leagues.
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up, where sometimes in collegiate, comfort is king. It might not be the top of the meta charts, but it can still succeed, and that does lead to some unorthodox composition, at least when you look at the pro level, and as you said, that min-max composition style. But it can also lead to strategies that some teams aren't necessarily expecting or have practiced that much against.
Yeah. And we'll be seeing kind of what the ideas for both these sides end up coming out. I will be. There was a micro patch, right? There was the micro patch that has occurred. Mm-hmm. I believe we're going to be playing on that. So you have the Zeri nerfs that come through. You have the Ashe buffs. The Jinx nerfs are more severe than the Aphelios nerfs. I think the Aphelios nerfs were very minor. The Jinx nerfs are a little bit more severe in terms of hitting the early game laning safety that they have. I think a little bit maybe overlooked, but the Aphelios nerfs are very minor, and you have some very minor buffs. The biggest buff of that, I believe, is going to be Ashe, which we have seen before from Manhattan. So I would not be surprised to see that again coming out, because they have continually played it even when it was not buffed, and then especially with the ultimate cooldown going down, that was the biggest thing for them, was setting up plays with that Ashe, around that Ashe being a playmaking AD carry, not on a carry like an Aphelios. So that should definitely be something to look at, keep an eye on for this draft.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, when we talked to the bot laner of Manhattan, they brought up how often they're looking to be that more supportive style, and Ashe fits right into it. They've shown success already, and now with, a 20-second buff to that Enchanted Crystal Arrow, to a mana buff on that volley, giving you more lane presence, and with the removal of some of these, hyper carries that still do well in lane, I mean, specifically Jinx, you don't have that fishbone safety, and Aphelios is a little bit weaker, where some of those breakpoints might favor the Ashe with some of her earlier item spikes. It's a good time to like to be playing Ashe, and so Manhattan's bot lane can be very, very happy about that one.
And it's a bad time to like having HP in lane, because a lot of poke that can come out now with that Ashe W. And obviously the Ashe buffs don't come into effect until 3rd level on your volley, so typically gonna be level 5. You can also try and go fast on it and try to just hit you can go 2 levels in W before you get your E, right? Before you get your Hawk shot, right? That's something that does happen, but it doesn't change the breakpoint, just makes it net neutral as a not a nerf anymore, because it is a nerf level 1. They were cognizant of the fact that if they just reduced it completely at level 1 as well, it might be a little bit too oppressive, but surprise, people like putting points in W, so not really going to be too much of an impact on them, and especially like you said, no fishbone safety to kind of try to outrange the Ashe W. You can pair it up with something like a Zyra. Ashe Zyra, always a fun lane to go against, and you definitely have HP, you definitely can survive that, I think. But yeah, that could be interesting to see how that ends up playing out in the bot lane.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also a ton of other ways you can take it. You can pair it alongside a Leona, and you have some of the strongest engage just in the game possible, or you could get your standard enchanter, get a Lulu in that bot side, and you're also going to be very, very happy with all of the options you have available. So I think that bot lane for Manhattan is where we're going to look, and for Fairfield, as we're talking Drifter in that jungle, going to be the one to watch on that side, as again, lobby will be put together, and we'll be getting into draft very, very shortly.
Yeah, and I think I said this earlier when in terms of Manhattan, I said they have made mistakes in the games before, particularly against Niagara, and I don't know if you haven't watched that game there at home, the context, all you have to know is Riven Yasuo bot lane was locked in, and it went about as well as you think it would. They kind of got a little bit too like we said earlier, too much hubris, overconfident in themselves, and they said, oh, we can beat Niagara with this troll draft. It was a very interesting draft with a capitalization on those first 3 letters, and I was very concerned, like, are we gonna do this later? Like, I hope we don't ever do this in the championship thing. Like, that obviously would be ludicrous to try and do that when you're so close to qualifying. And I think if they do overstep, get overconfident, even within a match, even within one game itself, that could snowball into a loss for them.
Yeah, it definitely could, because if you throw one game, let's say it's your game 1 or your game 2, then you're effectively on the back foot when it comes to tempo. If it's that game 1, then Fairfield's feeling really, really confident, and they might be able to find some of the other weaknesses present within their gameplay and push that as we are getting into draft, and we'll get to see, and not just speculate, what these teams are going to do as the Syndra ban away from Aderzo. What we expect has been very, very strong on that pick, and the Hecarim taken away from Drifter.
Yep, Hecarim going to be taken away, done their homework. Syndra as well being taken away from Manhattan, done their homework as well. Going to be taken away Jarvan. They're afraid of a lot of ganks coming in onto those lanes. Yeah, going to be taking that away. And I think it's going to be integral to see how much these jungle bans actually affect them in terms of affecting Grifter, because there should be some. I mean, you have the jungle bans thrown away. Also, the Jarvan's taken off the table. We've seen Grifter before not have a propensity for that Jarvan, so that ban doesn't affect them as much. But what do they pick up in this situation? They still have something like a Lee Sin. They have Xin Zhao still up on the board and available, so there are some picks. First pick, Annie, not something we typically see. We'll see what the Aderzio counter pick will be eventually. We've seen a lot of Zilean, we've seen Syndra, a lot of options for Aderzio.
Yeah, I was going to say that a Zilean here in response to that Annie feels really, really strong. I think it's a solid response. And there it is, the Zilean, as we were mentioning, Aderzo, an absolute monster at times on that pick, as you can see Fairfield on that stage right alongside Manhattan, and these two teams on stage feeling that energy of being at LAN.
Yep, and definitely seeing them right now. You got some face paint there, up in some school spirit right now. Obviously, it's a fun time to kind of be doing LANs again. I mean, you think about it, it's been 2 or more years since everything kind of got shut down, and a lot of the time, that's enough time for you to move out of college, move on from college, or leave an esports program, that kind of stuff. So for a lot of people, maybe it's their first time going to a LAN, especially for a collegiate LAN. And it's just it's kind of happy to just be back in this environment. Jin as well, good pick up Jason Woods. We said they liked weak side bot lane. Jin, a very big proponent of that. They are very safe in terms of getting farm with their W and their bouncing grenade. So definitely have a lot of opportunity with that. And Unopen going to be taking that Jinx, obviously. Power pick in the meta right now. We'll see how those nerfs end up affecting Unopen in that early game. But right now, the response for Manhattan have been kind of seen before in the previous games.
Yeah, these are not unfamiliar picks. I am going to say I still would have really liked to see the Ashe picked up because I love Jason Woods on that pick. Is very, very comfortable. The Enchanted Crystal Arrow now having that 20-second shorter cooldown, I think would be great to see with how Manhattan likes to do their playmaking. They have the Zillion speed. They have some other options. And it looks like Godsent wants some aggression in the top lane going up against Werferoid's Mordekaiser.
Yep, definitely going to be a response to Mordekaiser. Typically not a blind pick you want for Mordekaiser. You want them into tanks. A lot of the time you want the Mordekaiser into tanks. They just naturally out-damage them, and they heal off them in those extended fights with Conqueror, with their own healing built in, with that Omnivamp they do pick up in terms of that Riftmaker. It makes the Mordekaiser a very potent anti-tank character in the top lane. Darius, the correct response there. That Mordekaiser is extremely surprisingly squishy, and Darius loves it when he can just hit you with the combo and bleed you for half your HP. So that's going to be kind of a little bit of a mistake that they picked both those solo laners, and they're now leaving jungle and support open for counterpick. You're going to have some time now to get more jungle bans in. Viego, again, off the table. I'm really thinking the only responses I can see from them are something like a Xin Zhao, maybe a Lee Sin. It's just so pinched right now in this jungle.
Yeah, I think the only other space where you could maybe pick up a carry is something along the lines of a Rek'Sai, but that can be so feast or famine if you don't get things rolling. And going up against a Zillion and a Karma, there's so much survivability where you won't be getting those executes, and there's honestly enough lockdown for a champion that can struggle if she gets stuck. So I think that it's going to be tough for Grifter to find, I think, an effective answer. And on the other side, Manhattan, this Karma, I think, just goes perfectly into their composition, and there's the Xin Zhao you mentioned.
Like right now, it's going to be that Xin Zhao is your only option, right? I mean, what are we going to see here? It could have been Lee Sin. Do we see Lee Sin here from Steffo? I don't think that's Steffo kind of their playstyle, so we'll see what this ends up picked up. They're like wondering, what do I pick up? Poppy's not. I mean, you only have Xin Zhao. You're kind of basically going, Xin Zhao can't E, but am I really going to stop that? So the jungle role was pinched so much, we've ended up going to a Pompey. Karma Jin in the bot lane. It's kind of this weak side lane that's very self-functional, but is gankable as well. They have a lot of ganks up in that Karma and that Jin. Both of their W abilities are very good at comboing and getting some CC down onto Unopen, but Black Shield is going to be trying to prevent that as much as possible. You have a very safe lane here for both sides, but also a lane that has poke from both sides in terms of those supports. So that'll be interesting, the bot lane, to see if Grifter or Steffo want to step down there. It seems like a very hands-off lane. It seems like Steffo might just want to put Werferoid as far behind as possible, especially considering this Darius wants to be 1v9 and wants to have all that gold.
Yeah, if Godsent can get rolling, that's going to be a very, very scary champion for the side of Fairfield to deal with. But I also think this Poppy maybe goes a step further. It's not so much denying the dashes, but if anything, it could just be denying engage, you know? If this Annie starts to step forward, throw her out of the fight, and that Tibbers is gone. If Grifter on the Xin Zhao wants to dive in, jump onto Jason Woods or a Derzo, you can knock him away and turn, a 4v4 into a 3v4 or a 5v5 into a 4v5. And sometimes that man advantage for 2 seconds is enough to win a fight.
Yep, and we're going to be getting down on that spectator delay, obviously built into the lead client. Not much to do about that, but we're going to be waiting again. On your left side, it's going to be Fairfield, and it's going to be on your right is Manhattan. And these two teams are going to be facing off to see who can move forward and potentially face Damaris, unless the I mean, the upset of all upsets that ever occurred, in which case Niagara does end up beating MAAC. We'll have the game after this, actually, so we'll end up seeing how that goes. So they're playing the winner of the next game, predicted to be MAAC, but crazy things have happened, you know? Crazy things have happened. I'm not going to say crazier, but I will say crazy, because not much can be crazier than that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to 2016 Worlds, Albus Nox Luna making it to quarters. That was pretty crazy, but I will say Niagara, with some of their struggles and how solid Fairfield has been in this conference, Niagara was able to, you know, clean up their early game and figure out a couple ways to close out the games. There's a chance, however small, that it could happen. And of course, Manhattan and Fairfield, they don't have to worry about that. They want to get this match done and dusted with whoever's going to come away with the win and see if they can go against whoever is qualifying next, who we can assume to be Marist from their strength this entire season. But going on to this game at hand and the draft we're looking at, it feels like sort of the strong points for Manhattan weren't pinched as hard as the strong points for Fairfield.
I mean, still can have a lot of playmaking on that Jin Zhao, but once you get to those mid to late game team fights, your Jin Zhao is going in, pressing R, and going, guys, kill them! They're trying to beat me up, right? Like a lot of the time, that's how it's gonna feel like. They're just you're just a buffer in terms of your team to follow up, and there's a lot of follow up they do have, right? They have the Jinx to kind of be there and exist. You have the Mordekaiser to peel threats away from the Jinx. You also have an Annie, first pick actually. So they were just going, we're gonna go simple. We're going to go a character that's very hard to kind of lose lane on in terms of the safety of CSing, the mobility that's given over by her E, which is a shield, plus a Bramble Vest, basically, in terms of the damage it's going to give back and movement speed as well. So it's really crazy how good that ability is, or just how good a lot of the abilities on Annie's kit is, but it's very simple, and the reason for why Annie isn't seen more outside of Cryan, is it Cryan, or Annie at Worlds, the Chinese LPL Annie that played it at Worlds.
I remember that game, but I don't remember
Cryan,
the player.
But might be wrong about that. And that'll be... yeah, so that's kind of the only time we've seen it, and it's just very simple because, like, once the Annie gets off the combo, they're like, I have no more mana. I actually just don't have it. I can't do anything anymore, so have fun with Tibbers.
Or you just don't have the cooldowns. Because, you know, your Tibbers is going to be a minute, your W is, you know, 5 or 6 seconds, your Q 4 seconds or something along those lines, and it's very difficult that if you don't land that Tibbers on 2 members, your impact in the fight is going to be very muted. It's not going to do what you want, and I'm going to say, I had Annie and ARAM recently, and I was just always shocked by how short that Tibbers range is, and how it is not what it used to be when I started playing. I loved playing Annie mid, and I would make all the Zeds angry by ulting myself the second they jump on me. Yep. Well, that hasn't changed. Your ability to impact team fights really has, where you don't have that same range you used to have for this big game-changing ultimate, and instead you were really forced to flash, and if you don't have that flash up, and you're only using it aggressively, it's a very risky play style, and I think that if a team could punish it, it's certainly Manhattan.
Yeah, I think we actually saw, I don't know if I was casting with you or not, I think it was the week you were gone. I think it was for Big East, and we were casting as an Annie, and I was like, guys, please, Annie, you have to ult on top of the carry. The Aphelios was like 12-1 or something, and I was like, just please ult the Aphelios, you can't play the video game over and over again. And it was crazy because the Annie kept using it on these tanks or on like the supports, right? And it's like, if you just have good target selection on your Annie ultimate, you literally delete a character from the video game. The only thing that can save them here is going to be Zillion ult. Not even a Maw, a lot of the times, can save you from it, because one Maw is just so much of a gold commitment right now, and you could just burst through it as Annie. It's just so crazy how much damage Annie does end up doing, which is why Flash is so important on her, because of that short range, like you alluded to, with that ultimate, with Tibbers. You flash R, that's a combo, Jason Woods, gone. Adairzio, gone. Even Godsent, if they get like Void Staff and stuff, basically gone and stunned. So a lot of damage to follow up on a Tibbers, and that's what Annie is. I'm going to play this character that once I delete one of your characters, I'm not really a champion anymore, but it doesn't matter because you lost a character.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes that 1-for-1 trade is enough if you're getting rid of that damage dealer, as we are on the Rift for Game 1 between Fairfield and Manhattan College. Winner goes on to face the winner of the next matchup in the finals of the MAAC Conference Championship, as we're seeing pretty standard starts out of both teams. Bot laners getting leashes from, or both junglers starting bot side, getting leashes.
Oh.
And right now we've run into a technical issue. Looks like some mouse problems from the side of Fairfield. So those will be rectified as quickly as possible. People on the floor will be making sure everything is situated and everything is cleaned up. Just want to make sure that there's no issues.
I think it's a good part of the LAN, right? You can have some people to come in like, what's going on, right? Before it's like this very disjointed thing. The teams are like obviously very far away from each other. You don't have people on standby to go and check things out. Obviously, the TOs weren't going to be able to like go into their practice facilities or dorm rooms or whatever and go check their equipment. So now that's kind of cool. We can see that at LAN. And man, I'm happy to see LANs coming back in more frequency in esports. Obviously, still with proper safety precautions if they are followed. I do love them being back because I mean, it's just so much fun to see this LAN international competition, especially in higher esports. And right now, in conferences and stuff, and then we're going to see these teams coming from the same regions. We get to see them compete. And we've seen them online so much times, but now we see them in person, like on the computers and all that. It feels really nice to see that, and we're trying to get that issue fixed out very soon for you. But again,
yeah,
I want to kind of look. It's like, what do you think Fairfield like is going to be doing for this game to like really put them ahead in terms of the draft so far?
I mean, I think this game, it really does center around Xin Zhao is an early pick. He's an early game. He succeeds in the early game, and if he can get ahead, he can take over a game. And Grifter is known for trying to do that and being able to do that. So if you're able to get the Xin Zhao to head topside, make sure that the Darius isn't beating up on your Mordekaiser. If you take it mid, make sure that this Annie isn't just getting bombed down. And in the bot side, if you get your Jinx a kill, that might be enough to start snowballing the lead, even though she's been nerfed. So I think that the Xin Zhao just needs to pick a lane, make sure they get ahead, and continue to play through that lane and just sort of not necessarily sack, but at the very least be like, you're going to be the weaker side of the map. Here's where we're devoting our resources.
Yeah, in terms of, I've kind of talked about like Grifter has to be better at playing to what lanes need to be played for. And I think in this game, stay away from that top lane. Stay away from that Darius, man. It sucks because it's a Mordekaiser and you blind picked it into the Darius. The Mordekaiser is heavily counterpicked here. Not much the Mordekaiser can even do. So even if you gank them, we've talked about this before, even if you gank them and get them ahead of gold, is it going to change the map lane? Is it going to salvage that lane? No, the Darius will still win until it's like, I don't know, Mordekaiser has a Rift Maker and Darius has a Phage, basically. Maybe then you win, but even then, it's not always entirely the case. So it's kind of this thing like, play towards these lanes. Annie, get that ahead. Well, then you neutralize characters on the enemy team with that Tibbers combo. Or if you play for bot lane, this issue should be getting fixed out shortly. There we go, look at that.
Yeah. Spectator bugs, we love to have them.
Play for Annie, or you play for this Jinx Morgana, which has a lot of setup in terms of chompers and that dark binding. So those two lanes are kind of where you want to focus towards. I think Darius versus Mordekaiser, too bad a matchup, stay away.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very tough. I think the only window that Grifter's going to have to impact this top side is going to be a level 3 gank after finishing this clear. And the thing is, Godsent already aware of it with that ward on the Raptors, I think, placed by Adairzo. As in the mid lane, we're seeing both players just sort of going back and forth, trading in and out. And I'm just a little intrigued as to how, this bot side for Fairfield is really suffering. Bazanjosh just been applying all of that pressure, but I mean, Manhattan, I feel like they just have so many really solid tools to play this game out, but one thing that does...
Dark Harvest Gen, wait.
Yeah, Dark Harvest Gen. But I was going to say, one thing that does trouble me a little bit is, as this game goes later, there's not really a true carry, as Grifter and Steffo run into each other. Mid laners on their way. Grifter just tries to jump over to Adairzo, tries to finish off with Laughing at Onions, and First Blood does go to Grifter and may be going down slow, taken out by Laughing at Onions, but Godsent picks up a response. So overall, a 2-for-1 in favor of Fairfield, but that Darius has a kill under his belt.
And is it the worst possible stuff for Fairfield? I don't think so. Yes, Darius has picked up that kill. And yes, it gets worse for Fairfield, but that matchup already so unbearable, that's what you're going in with. You have picks now, kills now, onto your Xin Zhao, onto your Annie. These are massive. And I think this could kind of set the tempo for the rest of the game. I want Grifter to kind of keep applying pressure to Adairzo in that mid lane. Doesn't have that flash up. And especially this bot lane, Poppy is going to have to be a lot more scared. Doesn't have a flash of their own. And looking at this bot lane, we talk about Bazanjosh doing so much because these enchanter supports like Karma, like Lulu, are considered very good into Morgana because they poke them out and there's not much response Morgana can do if you dodge the Dark Binding. So that's going to be good for them. But if that Dark Binding does land, Grifter can just get in very easily. And I don't think it's just good from Steffo to try and keep contesting this. Yes, you have the better 2v2 top side, 2v top jungle, but if that mid laner does get involved, laughing at onions, if they do get involved, it could be dangerous for you.
Yeah, could be incredibly dangerous, as we are seeing Steffo just sort of fast track it over, and some XP given over by Aderzo, helping out that deficit as Godsent forced to respect. Wherefore it flashes forward, does get the knockback, and this might just be enough early damage from the Xin Zhao and the Mordekaiser as Godsent goes down and Grifter picks up another kill.
Yep, hard push, there we go. Even throwing in that spiked whip there to push that lane in, where Freud gets the reset off. Good stuff right there. And we'll see if this can help them. Hearthbound Axe is going to get picked up here from the Darius. Could have been boots, I think. What boots do you go this game? I would say MR boots, not only because you can match Werefroid, they have a lot of CC as well, so that tenacity is going to be much appreciated from those merc treads. I think that would have actually helped them. The base damage on Darius is so high right now that if you just mitigate the amount of damage Werefroid can put out when they only have a Ruby Crystal and that amplifying tome, I think that would allow Godsend to really take over this lane. But instead right now, there is some opportunities again. If Grifter does come up with a gank, right? Don't have the mobility from the boots to dodge an E coming out or a W from the Xin Zhao, so could be a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, and both sums were burned by Godsent in that first engage where he did pick up a kill on the Grifter. So the fact that there is just so many resources used by Manhattan to try and find a couple kills in this early game, and it hasn't resulted in too much. Fairfield started setting the tempo, and I like to see it.
Now to slow down a little bit. Lanes without flashes are going to mean not really willing to take as many risks, and is going to mean risk-adverse gameplay is going to come out here, especially from Werefroid. Going to have to be very scared of Godsent poking them down, and that's going to be good. They don't have a Doran shield. They don't really take one in this matchup anyway, so... But that poke is going to be a little more permanent than otherwise. And now look at this mid lane right now. Zilean obviously is going to outrange his Annie in a lot of ways. Only Annie's auto attacks are super far ranged. Everything else is pretty short range, including that Q that can come out. But you really don't want to be using that for poke. But in this top side, level 6 hit for Werefroid.
Yeah, early level 6 means Godsent has nowhere to go. Grifter picks up that third kill. And, I mean, this continued pressure... While, yes, maybe this Mordekaiser isn't getting as much gold, but you're putting the Darius behind, and to me, it's the only real carry threat that Manhattan has, because Jhin can deal some solid damage from afar, Aderzo has the bombs, but your consistent damage, that DPS, I feel can only really come from the Darius, and the more you shut him down, the worse the team fights for Manhattan are going to be.
And I think we're seeing right now, it's like the laning prowess from Manhattan's bot lane and mid lane are a little bit higher, right? We're seeing these CS differentials come in that are mainly unaffected by the jungle so far in terms of the mid and bot lane. So these are just naturally how the matchups go. So they're going to have these accrued, but like you said, there's no carry. I mean, we've seen crazy things from Aderzo on Zilean before, right? This character is really good. But how much of a carry performance can they put on? It's yet to be seen, especially with Grifter this far ahead. I'm liking that we're seeing this kind of tempo setting up from Fairfield. We've had this talk about it before. They have a strong jungler with playmaking potential, and I want them to see them use it, and they're using it right now.
Yes, they're certainly using it, and that setting the tempo, that early enabling of the Xin Zhao, even though he's nerfed, still has most of his damage, as it really was just some cooldown tweaks, is taking a peek at the gold. Yeah, we're seeing, these rifts open up, especially in that bot side, about a 600 gold difference. But you look at the jungle, 1,300.
Yep. Gonna be a lot of gold, obviously, on that Grifter right now as compared to that Poppy. And, again, like you said, I mean, who is going to do the majority of the damage? I'm betting on Zilean. A lot of the time, it can be difficult, I think, for this Darius to get in. Obviously, he's going to have the Ghost to help them, and it's going to help them in these team fights, but man, it can be bad when you get Dark Binded, right? Which is why I suggested the Merc Treads, right? The only thing that's going to prevent you, if you get zapped into a Dark Binding, into Chompers, right? How do you get in? You're just going to get kited the entire time. So those Merc Treads are so vitally important. I want to see them get picked up at some point as well, because it also helps you avoid these ganks. If Grifter is looking to gank your lane a lot, definitely could be an option for you, but not going for those, instead trying to rush towards that Trinity Force as fast as possible. But, I mean, how do you think they could, I mean, man...
I mean, that's it. It's just, you've been taken to the Shadow Realm.
Yeah.
Werefroid says, bye-bye. This is my matchup now.
When this happening in a Darius what kind of matchup, it's rough, right? It is a rough time. How do they get back from this, right? How do they kind of respond right now? So far, their biggest bully lane has now been neutralized completely in terms of Fairfield versus Godsend. And we've seen this before. From Godsend was kind of one of those carry players for them, right? They tried to get them on things like the Aatrox, like the Darius, and it's not working this time. And this could be tragic. If their game plan in terms of setting up their mid and top lane by playing this weak side bot lane, by playing these more supportive junglers, if that doesn't go, if your mid lane is dying right here, we didn't even catch it. It happened so fast. We just didn't even catch it. They're dying.
Yeah, I mean, you just get one shot by Tibbers plus Xin Zhao. I will say, in this bot side, Bazanjosh and Jason Woods haven't backed yet with 82 CS. So I think that they've just been in such a solid spot, and they haven't had like the greatest reset timers. But when they come back, they'll be quite a bit stronger, and I think it's going to impact how much pressure they can start to apply and whether or not Manhattan can look to play through their bot side.
I mean, again, do you see the two people on the screen that have the most deaths, that are the most getting put far behind by Grifter? It's those two players. We say their names the most every time we cast a Manhattan game. It's going to be Godsend, it's going to be Dazer. These key players for them are now being put behind. Can they get out of this deficit, right? How does the mid-game calling look like? I don't know if we've seen enough to prove that they can reliably get themselves out of deficit without Fairfield making key mistakes. So right now, it's going to just be the curtain call.
Yeah, the curtain call dropped.
Kill.
Body blocking as much as she can. The heal used, but Bazanjosh finishes the job. And even with an item advantage, Fairfield falls in the bot lane.
Fairfield's ball. Grifter in the jungle.
The action doesn't stop. Grifter caught out by Stefo and Adair's, though. There's the ultimate drop from the Zillion, and the knock-up to keep him in place. Unopened, gonna get chunked. Oh, Grifter, that flash forward. Don't love it, but the kill does go the way of Unopened, and Grifter looking to keep this going. Does have the Gourd Drinker. Laughing at Onions now has the stun online. No Tibbers available, and with that W not finding anyone, it'll just be, I think, a 1-for-1 across the board. Laughing at Onions don't take that extra clockwork damage, but still, we're seeing Fairfield track Manhattan, and this isn't what they've done before, and I'm loving it.
This is a different Fairfield I've seen from them, right? We've had issues with Fairfield in the past in terms of how their play can sort of devolve in the mid to early game. I'm seeing good stuff from them right here. Grifter's doing a great job, really stepped it up at this LAN, and now we're going to see here, no flash available because of early flub, but can they get the kill? Doesn't look like that's going to be the case. Instead, going to get rooted up. And now, how do we call back here? How do we call back here for Manhattan? We've seen them be so dominant in the early game has been the biggest thing. So how do they get past this? Like, do we have any data on how they get back? I don't know.
I mean, I'm not sure. I'm going to say the back into Gale Force has to feel really, really good for Jason Woods. And that is going to make a very big difference in the spot side, where I'd expect to see a lot more aggression, a lot more kill pressure out of this Jhin, as again, you know, Jinx needs a little time, especially being 40 CS down, and same with Maricia on this Morgana. Not going to have the best tools of dealing with the Jhin, but if they play it safely and they don't let Jason Woods get further ahead, Grifter can completely shut down a Jhin just by walking up to him.
Yes, and now I am concerned in a very big way in the fact that now this Jinx has kicked up this kill. The CS difference was already massive for them, and the fact that Jason Woods only came away with about 150 gold in that situation, it doesn't feel great. Obviously way ahead of this Jinx because of just CS differential alone, but it still is going to feel bad when that bleeding that was just going unclosed is now just stemmed a little bit.
Yeah, as now Laughing at Onions just caught out, gets stunned up, and in the bot lane as well, Jason Woods finding a kill onto Unopened and a double onto Maricia, so there's the power of that Gale Force coming in, and we might start to see Manhattan push through their bot lane as they have reclaimed the gold lead.
They do have potential to get picks here, right? They have Zillion to speed them around and allow them to get into position and get on top of people very quickly. So they have that capability for themselves, right? So Jason Woods, in terms of getting this gold on themselves, allowing them to be a little bit better at finding picks. That's going to be for the wave clear. Not the worst ultimate. I think Jinx ult is like -2 second cooldown anyway. So just throw it out whenever you need to, and you will be fine. Wherefore, like I said, in this top lane, this matchup now doesn't look so bad, right? When you have this full mythic compared to just components now available for Godsend, who stopped trying to rush that Trinity and instead has opted over for trying to get those Merc Treads on. Good decision.
Yeah, good decision. I think maybe a little too late, as
a little too
had
late,
that Merc Treads, you know, at that level 5 juncture, maybe you survive instead of just getting effectively one shot by that Death Realm. But Godsent still surviving, still playing that weak side. Now with some increased strength out of Manhattan in the bot side, they pick up this second Drake, as we're going to have a Hex Tech Drake.
I feel like I've played about 20 games of League of Legends in the last couple of days, right? Every game is a Hex Tech Drake. I'm not even lying. That's what it feels like. It's that or a Cloud. It's never anything fun.
Yeah.
So we're going to be getting these...
I think it's fun.
I think it kind of messes with timings. It messes with timings. It messes with timings of things, right? Because you kind of like think you're safe, and then they're coming out of your jungle, and you're like, oh wait, Hextech gates are the thing. Like jungle timings, rushing objectives, that kind of stuff can get messed up by it. Speaking of objectives, we're gonna get this Rift Herald online. I would like to see that put into top or mid to try and free them up to allow them to impact this bot lane. Because right now it's best bot lane differential that's occurring in terms of the gold is allowing them to secure these dragons, which is not what you want to see. Especially when you had such a good early game in the top side of the map. You definitely wanted to maybe try and influence Dragon a little bit more, but instead, just going to be opting in for the Rift Herald instead because of the stronger Annie and Mordekaiser on their side.
Yeah, and finding those answers, finding that shift, it feels like the map has been split in two, where Fairfield wants to play around this top side, Manhattan wants to play through this bot side. Maricia looks like she's about to get caught out. Good Black Shield to avoid the Everfrost slow and flash away. Was able to get a couple wards down, but overall net advantage for Manhattan. And one thing I do want to, I'm thinking of, is as this game goes later, and this Jhin is looking to be more and more that primary carry, Fairfield has a perfect answer in Werferoid's Mordekaiser. Take him to the Death Realm and win the team fight outright. And what is Manhattan going to do without their Jhin, without their carry, who is continuing to scale up? As now Grifter dropping this Herald. Looks like it is going to be a dive, and good jump forward from that Wind Becomes Lightning. The ultimate's dropped, and first tower will be going the way of Fairfield.
Yep, good. Turn to the top side. That's going to allow this Mordekaiser to just shove out waves and move down to mid lane, potentially even a dragon fight if they do so believe. And so help me, this bot lane does need some help right now. I mean, almost a 40 CS differential in terms of Jason Woods to unopen. No sums are available in terms of no flashes online for Fairfield. And this turret should be going down very shortly. We're going to see the Xin Zhao running down here, looking for something. Pings up. They know the vision is here. And Poppy, recognizing that Xin Zhao could be making a play in the bot side because they're pushed up, is in the vicinity. Now again, this turret's just going to go down. Obviously first turret with Rift Herald is a little bit better, but still, this is going to allow Jhin to impact the map, which is what you want in a bot lane, right? To get out of there and start impacting the map, which they can do, especially with the tools that Karma and Jhin have available to them. Yeah,
absolutely. As we're seeing Grifter caught in his own jungle, and without that ultimate, without that ability to get everyone off, it's going to be tough to survive. And indeed, as Josh finishes it off, Steffo finds Onions, and now Fairfield losing some ground in their own jungle.
Yeah, I think that power, like I said, of why you want that Jhin away. Well, I think Grifter could move there. I think there was a slight problem with their ability to move. They didn't move for 20 seconds, so that's going to be what you're going to look for in terms of the Adairzio and the Adairzio, Jason, and Steffo really just going to lock you down. That was a Death Realm. They were in the Death Realm in mid lane. I don't know how Adairzio got caught out by Werferoid like that, but that's what ended up happening was they're still killing him. I mean, Werferoid is taking over the game in that mid lane. Yeah. We didn't see what happened, but walked up, Death Realm's the Zillion, Karma stays around, gets clapped as well.
Yeah, this does feel like there's just two very visible carries on each of these squads. Fairfield having Werferoid, and Manhattan, of course, having Jason Woods. But the trouble is, one of these carries has a button that can take out the other. As
and right
now looking to get on the Godsent. Stun comes down. That should be enough damage. And Godsent is just straight up not having a good time.
Not having a good time. Jinx should die there. Like, honestly, if the Jhin was following the Poppy, Jinx could die there. No, ironically, Curtain Call comes out, Poppy follows up. Very dangerous. I want this unopened to hug mid turret as much as possible right now. I think Annie can operate the sidelines a little bit better in terms of they have the mobility available to them from the movement speed and also just disengage with stuns. Like, you can stun, run away. Always an option. And I'm actually surprised how little damage the Annie did earlier to Adairzio. Obviously has the Everfrost, which gives a lot of health, and mage items in general are giving a lot of health these days, but still kind of a little underwhelmed with the amount of damage that happened. But I think that wasn't a full combo. I think that was just the Tibu, so it makes a little more sense.
Yeah, I think so, as it does look like Fairfield looking to prioritize this Drake spawning in just 5 seconds, as Werferoid doesn't find anyone quite yet, and this is going to be a 5v5, and the ones to watch are Werferoid and Jason Woods. You're going to want to see this Jhin in the back line, as just waiting on this engage. Bazan Josh in the back line. Gets some solid poke down, and this looks to be how Manhattan wants to get things started. There's a curtain call. Mauricia goes down immediately, and it's suddenly a 4v5. Godsent trying to do what he can. Big Tibbers on a 2, but the Death Realm already used onto the Darius. Shut down onto Steffo, as the rest of the team trying to stay alive, and Werferoid somehow going low in the Death Realm. Adairzio reviving Godsent, and this is a disaster for Fairfield. Unopened trying to get excited, but too little damage, and it's not enough, as this is going to be a wipe for Manhattan, or near wipe with Onions barely escaping.
So, who do you think pokes out more in these kind of situations? Is it the team with the short-range Mordekaiser, Annie, and Jinzhao, or is it the team with a Zillion, a Jhin, and a Karma? It's a Zillion Jhin Karma every single day of the week, and Fairfield didn't look for flanks, kind of just stood in front of them, took the damage, and then were like, oh, we're all low, guess we gotta fight now. What you really want to do, you want to look for a flank there from Werferoid, or a flank there from Laughing and Onions. You want to get onto the backside, and I mean, there wasn't vision control set up around Dragon, which they definitely can have. I think these are finally the issues we've seen from Fairfield in the past, and I think it's kind of in their heads. They've had a really strong early game right now, but how can they transition that in the mid game? So far, they aren't taking vision control over big objectives. They would have found out about Karma. They would have known that big mantra Q was coming in. Already picking up the Morello, looking for the Putrefier. That's going to be a massive power spike for them when they pick that up, and there just wasn't any kind of proactive play there. It was just, let's take the poke, and then let's hope they end the fight after. That's not the approach you can take with this composition.
Yeah, it definitely isn't. And one point that I want to bring up is Fairfield, Mauricia lost her flash a few minutes ago for getting some vision, and that control ward was still up around the blue buff. And I'm going to say, from Fairfield, you need to be looking at your one teleport on your biggest carry in Werferoid, as potentially your only real avenue to surprise Manhattan.
It's definitely going to be interesting now that the gold has swung back in Manhattan's favor, and it's a rough spot to look at, because it's like we were so far ahead, we had so much presence in our mid top jungle, and now that kind of seems muted a lot of the time. Werferoid getting 1v1'd in that Death Realm because of the amount of damage they took beforehand. Again, you can't let that poke happen onto a Mordekaiser. They need to be as healthy as possible at the start of these fights, and you're not giving them the ability to do so. You need Laughing Onion to find the angles onto these carries. You're not allowing them to do so. These are kind of these key components of team play that are not being applied here for Fairfield, where even if they get these really great starts that Gifter are kind of allowing them, they don't know how to transition it.
Yeah, and that inability to transition is what really seems to plague some of the, Niagara, Fairfield. Yeah. Both teams that we've seen have been able to find early game advantages, but when they run into Manhattan, when they run into Marist, they don't know how to transition against these teams that know how to turtle until they hit their item spikes. And that's exactly what we saw in the bot lane. As just looking at Jason Wood's items, if he even sneezes at Unopened or Mauricia, that is game over, considering he's 3k gold ahead of his lane counterpart.
Yep, and like you said, Niagara, another team where I've said it time and time again on podcasts, I'm like, this team is not bad in the early game. This team is not bad early game team, but they can't transition to mid game to save their lives or save their games, right? It's just not something they can do. And now we're seeing Fairfield run into the same problem. I think Fairfield has done it a bit better over the season, which is why they're 3rd seed and Niagara is 4th seed so far. But the same issues are plaguing them again and again and again. And it's going to be interesting to see if they can kind of clean it up, potentially the next game, because that mid game is kind of passed already. We're starting to transition into the later stages of the game, and so now their opportunity to extend their lead and hit a closeout window are now gone. So they need to now find a way to close themselves back into the game. So longer closeout angle, it is a get back into the game angle.
Yeah, it's this sort of recovery as Aderzo, understanding Grifter's damage, waits for the team to show up, although Stefo, getting pulled back, forced to flash over the wall, and that Wind Become Lightning not followed up, for good reason, as there is a very fed Jhin on the other side. But still, Manhattan losing resources for really no reason.
Not really losing the Poppy Flash, like you said. Not a great start. Losing Zillion ult as well. If they were to fight to be started in the next, let's say, 30, 40 seconds, no Zillion ult is massive. We saw how big it was when Godsling comes out of the Death Realm, gets murdered, but not actually. Zillion says, not really, actually. That's Cap, because he's alive again. And Godsling gets out of there with his flash, and you've just lost that opportunity to turn the team fight. So Zillion is one of those characters that is just so annoying to play against, because they allow their team to make mistakes and then just reverse the mistakes, right? It's not a character that, like, completely outplays you. It's just like, oh, we made a mistake? No, we didn't. We didn't actually make a mistake. That's not real. So that's the reason why Zillion is so strong right now, because mistakes are going to happen. And Aderzio has been so good for this team in terms of usually getting advantages and then mitigating mistakes that the team makes.
Yeah, and that mitigation is what can separate, a middle of a pack to a top 2 team, as Fairfield now trying to reestablish a level of vision control. Meanwhile, Marist looking to suffocate them out as this dragon is spawning in just about 15 seconds.
I'll be seeing if any amount of setup can happen right now. Doesn't look like it. Looks like they're just grouping as 4 and trying to push out mid right now, trying to respond to Manhattan. And looking towards this next team fight, what can you look towards? I want proactive play out of Grifter, laughing at onions, and Whereford. I need them to try and take angles, take positions, take flanks, because that's what they're going to do to win this game. Flash up on Annie. Flash on Jason. Do it. Do it. Don't be scared. Flash on them. Don't group as 5 in one person. Okay. First, gotta be faster on these things. You can't also just group as 5 into a team that has AoE damage in the Zillion and in the Karma. You can't do that. You have to look for these individual angles. And again, we're seeing them not understand how to pilot their comp into the enemy comp.
Yeah, they're really struggling at those AoE windows, and Manhattan, understanding this, just runs straight over to Baron. They know they can force it with how far ahead they are, and Fairfield scrambling to try and find an answer. Aderzo playing the sort of vanguard position. Looks as though Grifter wants to get around the backside, find a way into the pit. That blast plant is still up, and it does appear that this pressure will force Manhattan, at the very least, off the Drake. Or not the Drake, off the Baron for now.
Gonna force them off. Very risky to start Baron with this composition. Where is the most of your damage coming from? I think it's gonna actually be Darius Bleed, but I mean, that's not a lot of damage considering something like if you're like going up against a Kraken Slayer Jinx, right? And you're like, oh, they can, or Phalios with good guns, you're like, oh, they can force that Baron really hard. This is not a team where like you're really melting that Baron. So starting a Baron in the face of a team that likes it when you're clumped up together because of the Annie ultimate, because of the engage you can get off with the Morgana and the Xin Zhao, that's not really a good idea. So I hope Manhattan doesn't try and make that a trend this game, because it could be very disastrous for them.
Yeah, I completely agree. As Unopen, just trying to find a couple camps, get back into this game, has really struggled just from that early CS lead and hasn't really been able to recover. Whereas on the other side, Jason Woods has just continued to snowball 3 items already, has access to that rapid fire cannon, so we'll start dealing some of those really big damage shots from that much further away. And it feels like this window for Fairfield is closing, at least for now, because I would argue that they have a slightly better late game with the Jinx, with the Mordekaiser, and just I think the raw utility of Xin Zhao ulti and being able to make space.
Yeah, and I think here's the dedicated part of the broadcast where a caster talks about build pathing and why they think it's wrong. So I think they should go for PD there and look for Lord Dominic's. Right now, what you're doing, right now, how you're playing it currently is very front to back. But also, there's going to be a Poppy in your face. There's going to be a Darius in your face. You're never going to get past them to find shots onto Jason or Darizio. So I think just trying to get past them first of all is going to be important. What? Again, we're starting this Baron up, and that's not going to be good. Looking to catch out the Xin Zhao, but Black Shield is going to prevent any of that.
Yeah, Black Shield does slow down the approach. That layered CC. Godsent runs into a Chomper, but honestly doesn't care too much. as he has recovered from that initial early game deficit. Just about even on gold with Werferoid. Although, here's the potential flank. If he can find his way onto Jason Woods, it's a completely different fight. But Steffo, Godson, and the rest of the team doing everything they can. And Dare's taking out of the fight. Flash Tibbers onto Jason Woods, and he's gone. The big man is out of here, but unopened. Looking to fall to Godson, and maybe it's just the Darius. The big man coming through, getting huge. That massive juggernaut eventually shut down by his top lane counterpart in Werferoid as target selection goes the way of Fairfield.
I understand the idea there from Werferoid. They want to get that Zillion ult away from these carries, right? But then you allow Godsend, who is the actual supposed carry of this team from the draft, is going to be allowed to run free. And it's really going to have to be, if Werferoid wants to go for a play like that, and they go super hard with Laughing and Grifter onto the Jhin, you have to see a very good job from an Open and Merzia to kite out this Darius. Not even using the exhaust there kind of speaks to me that that was not done properly. I wasn't completely focused on them, but from what I saw, the kiting was not there. It's hard with the Ghost, but you have the tools to do it. You have the CC to lock down this Darius, and that's gonna, you have to buy time for your Mordekaiser to get value and your Annie. So a bit rough.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that exhaust was up, and it's a great point to bring out. You know, if Mauricia exhausts that Darius before he really gets rolling, prevents him from getting 5 stacks, and prevents him from going into that sort of Super Saiyan mode off of Unopened, that's a very different fight where Unopened might be alive to keep burning things down. Mauricia isn't pressured so hard, and maybe Laughing and Onions can find another stun. And if all of those factors exist, this could have been Fairfield finding a Baron. This could have been Fairfield finding a couple towers mid. And instead, it's just an even fight that then gets reset to this dragon spawning in 20 seconds. Manhattan looking for the Hextech Soul.
Yep, going to be getting the Hextech Soul up and about. Proactive play, once again, needs to just be occurring here. You have not that long on this dragon, right? It's coming up in 5 seconds. Where is my Fairfield, right? Where is my team? Why are we giving Soul? No, not the infamous Soul for Baron. You can't do this to me, Fairfield. Not like this. Oh, man.
And I don't even think they can get the Baron.
No, they can't get the Baron. No. Oh.
They were too late, and now this could just be an elaborate bait. There is no vision for Manhattan. Although, that might have been seen. Steffo runs forward, might just get immediately picked off, and Dare's sent to the death realm, forced to ulti himself, so that's at least one start. Jason Woods, though, untouched, and now Godsend going crazy. There's an Noxian Guillotine, there's 1, there's 2, there's 3, here comes maybe 4, looking for more. Werferoid, the last one on the chopping block, and a Quadra. Here, 4 Godsend. I don't know who stole the Penta, but still a massive fight. It was Jason Woods. Come on, man. Give him the Penta on stage.
I'm gonna be real. I saw that happening in real time, and I knew exactly the outcome of that one. That is a classic mistake. That happened when Dragon Soul was first introduced into the game. It has been quite a while since then. I would hope those mistakes have been cleaned up, and now they've opened themselves up to this game is completely blown open. I don't think there's many ways they get back into the game. Hextech Soul picked up for them. They don't get Baron off of it. They get aced. This has become an absolute nightmare for Fairfield after an absolutely blissful early game. That dream has really just been shattered, mostly off the back of Godsend getting back into this game and a misplay of macro from the side of Fairfield.
Yeah, they, I think, lacked a few moments in that mid-game, you know, right around the 12-15 minute mark, where they weren't converting as hard as they could, and they allowed for Jason Woods to just start picking up kills in that bot side, which allowed Manhattan to transition to him as the carry. And then once this Jhin is going to start falling off, it gave time for Godsend to be farming up and then become that carry after the fact. And I think one thing a lot of people don't always think about, I mean, I'm sure you think about it in your ranked games, is how you get 5 stacks on Darius. It doesn't matter how far behind he is. He will get 1 Q on your entire team. They will all be bleeding out. And boom, 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 you got a domino pile of Noxian Guillotines.
This is why that champion is permabanned if I'm playing top. Don't really care to see that champ in my game. So, right here, kind of getting the impact of that. Remember, this Darius was behind quite a lot to the point that Werferoid was just solo killing them, and I think Werferoid can still solo kill them. But we'll keep ulting a Darius here over and over and over again, and they are just going to live. They are not going to die in that ultimate. They have Zillion ult, they have Everfrost, they have HP, they have Flash, they have speed up, slowdown, whatever you want. They have all the utility in the world to kite out a Mordekaiser in Death Realm. So you are never ever killing Zillion with your ult. Mordekaiser has to be looking to remove Godsent from the fight to allow space for his team to push up. You're not just looking to, or if Jason would mess up, but so far Jason Wood hasn't, but you just need your space for your team to do something, and now Baron's gone. Baron's just gone right now.
Yeah. You can't contest this if you are Fairfield, one of your primary carries in Werfroyd, stuck in the bot side, holding off a Derzo, and this vision line has been pushed so far forward alongside the supers that Fairfield just can't step up. And with this Baron, I wouldn't be surprised if Manhattan is looking to close out the game.
Yeah. And I'm just looking at the fact that the CS in the mid lane right now for Adarzio, even if they don't have a single kill, they are so massively ahead of this Annie, right? They have 3 entire items. They're already moving on to the Morello, onto the Morello, which I don't think you need Morello if you have Putrefier, because Carmages are, like, Mantra ease you, Mantra shields you, and all your team has 60% Grievous Wounds. I don't know if that Morello Nemicon is needed. Could be some kind of MR pen item.
I think it's for the side lane, where Adarzio has been the answer to Werfroyd, so maybe it's just making sure that there's true damage getting down and denying that Riftmaker. I don't know. Honestly, I feel at this point it doesn't matter too much with how far ahead they are.
Yeah.
But
it's just the caster thing, right? It's just the caster thing.
It's just like, I mean, I agree. I would rather see that going towards like a Void Staff, so that way every single bomb is just chunking like crazy. But, I mean, if you want to look for how Manhattan found these leads, obviously they've got a minor kill lead, they've got towers, but the CS across the board is huge as this tower is going to go down. Fairfield can't even contest it against all of these Baroned up minions, and now looking to break the base once again in this bot lane. No real wave clear available to Fairfield, and with 2 siege minions just raining terror onto this tower, it's going to be very, very difficult. As Flash Tippers forward does proc the Zillion ulti, but doesn't quite do enough. Noxing Guillotine buffered by the stopwatch. Jason was already finding Grifter, finds Mauricia, finding unopened, and now actually getting a Quadra, and this time it was Godsent to steal the Penta. Yeah. So some poetic justice from the Darius.
Basically give a Penta to both of them. They basically both got a Penta this game. Basically.
But you gotta see it on the screen for it to count, as this is certainly going to be Manhattan finding their first game of the series, their first game in this playoff bracket, and a beautiful win from behind.
Yeah, beautiful win from behind, but also a bit of a worrying trend we've seen from Fairfield throughout the entire season that has continued into this playoffs. And it's really sad to see a team that gets so ahead and then just the mid-round decision-making and calling just kind of flounders, and some key team fights were just lost, right? Some key team fights were lost on the back of fundamental mistakes of how the composition does work into the enemy comp, right? They don't have a composition that allows them to just take the poke and dish it back out. They have to look for flanks. They have to look for some amount of flanks on the enemy team, and they just didn't have it. They just didn't have it in the slightest.
Yeah, they didn't really have it, as I believe we're going to get to see some of the highlights of that past match, see some of the ways in which Fairfield got ahead. I mean, this first blood going the way of Grifter, everything you could ask for, but Godsent getting started off. And while this wasn't the start of his return into the game, it certainly was maybe a sign of things to come.
Yeah, and a sign of things to come indeed, because you saw at the end there, Werfroyd finally put the death bomb on the Godsent. Godsent by that point had 9 kills, so the time to really remove Godsent from team fights was gone, and it was just a missed opportunity. This game, I think, can be best described as a missed opportunity. So you get to see them, Grifter, being able to move. A really fun time for him, and yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting to see if they can come back on this next map, next match game, and see if they can try to change things up, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they necessarily need to change all that much up, but what I would like to see changed is in this bot lane. I mean, we see in most of these fights, Unopen just has not had the impact that they want to have, and I feel like that's because they are being forced onto this carry role when they are struggling against Jason Woods, where if in this kind of fight you have an Ashe instead of a Jinx, where you don't feel pressure to jump forward, where that Enchanted Crystal Arrow gets all the utility you need, maybe that's the direction that Fairfield could look towards. put more carry focus in your top and mid lane, and let this bot lane support it, as opposed to trying to force them into being a weak side while still being your late game carry.
Yeah, and I want to kind of see, like, on Open and Marisha, I don't know if they can really compete against Jason and Bazangelos right now. They were completely outplayed in lane. I think there was none to very minimal jungle impact in that lane, and look at how it turned out in terms of how favorable it was for Jason and Bazangelos. They were able to find their own kind of leads in that lane, and I think we're going to have to see them on a matchup that isn't as poor for them in terms of the karma into the Morgana particularly. It's a very bad matchup for Morgana. I think we really need to see them play a lane that is not just safe, but also is like not matchup countered, you know? Like there's very little matchups that can counter it.
Yeah, definitely. Not finding that, you know, immediate counter, not having just that ability to free farm. And to me, Ashe in her buffed state really does speak to that. You will always have utility, even if you fall behind. You don't need to be played through. You can take that step back. You can contest some of the Jhin poke with your own volleys, and you're not pushed into such a linear play style as I think you are with the Jinx, where you have to get the ball rolling, you have to get excited, you have to carry your team, whereas Ashe can carry just through the right slows and the right stuns.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how that draft ideas kind of change up, if they change up. We'll see that in just a bit, as I believe lobby is getting set up. And
yes,
for Grifter, I don't know if we late pick a jungler. I want to see him on the Hecarim, like you said. I think we try. It's probably gonna get banned.
I don't think it's getting through. I think it's getting banned away.
I don't think it's good. Like, what have they banned? They've been last time. They've been Hecarim, Graves, Olaf. Like, what's the next thing after that? I think maybe it's a Xin Zhao. Probably what they can play. I don't know if he plays
Diego in the second round.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's something. Like, I don't know. I mean, early picking solo laners is never a good idea in terms of you get counter matchup like Darius and Mordekaiser. Obviously, they mitigated that, but in the end, it didn't. It doesn't even matter as Darius got back online. So early picking those late solo laners hasn't worked out for them. I think you just early rotate a pretty like Ezreal Karma, like Ezreal, literally just go Ezreal Karma maybe. Something Karma. It's very hard to kind of be counterpicked in that sense. You'll probably see like Leona or Khan or something come out from Bazangelos. We've seen that before. But
yeah,
something has to happen in terms of mitigating that.
Yeah, and I'm also going to say, Mauricia, I didn't like the Morgana too much. I would much rather see something like the Karma you mentioned, where it gives you some of that pressure. But I also wouldn't hate seeing something like a tank. I feel if we had a Leona in that spot to help enable the Tibbers, maybe that's a way to change the game, as we'll have to see if these teams do apply all of these draft strategies we've been talking about after a short 3-minute break, where we'll be right back with Game 2 between Fairfield and Manhattan College. Welcome back, as you caught me just coming back from taking my last sip of water before we got right back into the action, as we just saw Fairfield get ahead early and then fall right back behind once Manhattan got their footing. And now we have to see what changes they can make to change that story from happening once again.
Yeah, and I think the start of it is going to be mid-game for Fairfield, right? It was the biggest turning point for them, and from a certain team fight, I believe around Dragon, when Godsent just kind of went a little bit, no, not Godsent, it was Jason Woods went a little bit crazy with that curtain call after a good setup from the flanking Karma. After that fight, it seemed like the game left Fairfield's hands and it never returned. They were not able to ever get back into the game, and it felt like they were kind of just doing the same thing of grouping as 5 and then walking towards the enemy team when they're not playing a comp that suits that, nor are they playing against a team that allows that. So I think identifying one of the biggest things that I think teams can do, and this is present in League of Legends, and it really is not that present in like lower elos, I'd say, is where identifying how your comp operates and how their comp operates, because that is going to affect you a lot. You cannot just go off of what do we normally do with this champion. Things are going to change a lot in terms of the context of what you have to do with those champs and in terms of situations, and that was not done from Fairfield's side.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big card game player, and I think that's exactly how you have to approach most esports as well, is where, you know, you have a resource at your disposal, and yes, there's a way you like to use it, but is that the way you can always use it into a given matchup? You know, if you're playing a composition that wants to scale and just sort of control the map as much as they can, then you're going to be as aggressive as possible to punish that. And on the flip side, if you're a team that is traditionally aggressive with a really aggressive composition, but maybe has some late scaling elements like a Tristana, then you'll change your game plan based on what you're given by your opponents. And we saw some of those changes in the early game. We saw Fairfield targeting that Darius, who was evidently, you know, that primary DPS carry we saw in the late game, and shutting him down, and it started to work. But they also allowed Jin to fully spike in the mid game and carry Manhattan through that period where they so desperately needed it.
So desperately needed some way out, and they found it in Jason Woods, and I think we're going to see that again. Ash, I think, should be on the table. Will bans change up here for the side of Fairfield? I think that's what you start with, changing up bans, because it is going to be same side. So you are going to have first pick over to Fairfield. So what you're doing is, I think, Graves, Hecarim, and Olaf off the table. Not going to be allowed to go into Fairfield's hands. And I think we might need to start removing Zilean from the pool, because Zilean is a broken champion and should have been nerfed, but it has not been nerfed because people are blind to the reality of things.
Yeah, still getting rid of that Syndra, sort of, I think, limiting Adairzo's impact. I am going to say that game, it didn't feel so much that the Zilean was the main reason they were winning fights, but sort of a band-aid when they needed it, you know?
I mean, that champ is just, a revive is just not, it's just not fair, bro. That is just, Zilean as a character is just not fair. And of course, when you get Mordekaiser ulted 50 times, it's going to feel like you didn't have much impact in fights, because you were literally just neutralizing an entire character the time that ulted you, because your character is very good at kiting out. And we'll actually see Arya taking off, so I think these are the same bans. I don't believe that anything has changed so far. They're going to just first pick the Zilean instead. Okay, they've decided they've had enough of it as Zilean. They've decided they're going to take it themselves.
Yeah, I like this response, honestly, because this forces Adairzo onto something maybe like a Cassio. I think that's the only other pick we've seen out of them besides the Syndra and the Zilean. And we are just going to see the Jinx Lulu bot lane picked up by Jason Woods and Bazanjosh. So now giving them the carry, especially after a lane that they were so comfortable in that they could just farm it out. Now putting a hyper carry into that role. If I see a 40 CS lead onto this Jinx up against Unopen and Maricia, I am going to be very, very scared for the outcome of this game.
Yep. And I'm going to wonder what's going to happen next. Of course, picking up the Viega that was banned out last time, they've identified that they want that pick in Grifter's hands. Going to allow them to early dueling power carries in team fights where you get a reset, Viega can start popping off. If you can't get that reset, it's a little rough, but I mean, this bot lane in the hands of Manhattan is very scary to me. And I mean very, very scary, because I think they could easily overpower Unopen and Marisia, and from there the game might just be lost because they will not have an answer to this Jinx Lulu.
Yep, and there's the Cassio for Derzo. So sticking to standard, sticking to what they know. And now I've got a feeling that we'll probably see some targeting towards the bot lane. I wouldn't even be surprised if we saw an Ashe ban here out of Manhattan, because I feel like Ashe is the only effective response. I mean, there is the Kai'Sa, but I don't feel like the Kai'Sa in Unopen's hands is going to be as impactful as an Ashe would be.
And we'll end up seeing what those are going to be after this ban phase is done. Is the Ashe taken off the table? Is another ADC taken off the table? Is it support? It's going to be Jhin, okay? Kind of in the similar vein to the Ashe. If that was Ashe Jhin ban, I feel a lot more confident, but is going to leave that Ashe open. And or Aphelios, right? Aphelios could easily, I don't know, I am not 100% confident in what Unopen does play, but Aphelios could be in there, and Aphelios is an answer to Jinx in terms of matching early game range and damage, and then matching mid-game damage, and then even really can surprise with the burst damage in the late game, where Jinx is typically very strong. It's like, well, Aphelios can do as much damage and sometimes even quicker, so that's why Aphelios is kind of the answer to Jinx, because they can match them in 2 phases of the game, and then a little bit underperform, but almost match them in the late game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you get that Infernum Gravitum, Moonlight Vigil, you are wiping a team off of this Rift. And we're actually seeing this going to be a Zilean in the bot side. Marisia staying on the Morgana. I don't hate it as much into the Lulu and the Cassio. I think that Black Shield can get a lot more value.
Wait, what?
This looks like a Zilean
Victor
APC.
No, it should be Victor, right?
Could be Victor, but I think this is Zilean in that bot side, not the Victor. I'm not 100% sure. We'll have to wait and see.
I don't know about that one. I don't know about this. I'm going to be real. I don't know about this. Morgana has a bad matchup in the Jinx Lulu, and then I feel like you can't really stop the Jinx and Lulu from kind of running over your bot lane right now. I feel like this is very bad. The very poor decision here from Fairfield in terms of going for this Victor Zilean. I mean, obviously they have a lot of AD in that Viego and that Camille, but still, I mean, it's going to be hard to team fight, I would imagine, in this game.
Yeah, to me, the team identity just feels to be a little lacking from Fairfield, because you have this Viego and this Zilean who can do pretty well in the mid game. This Camille who also spikes right around 1.5 items initially, and of course just continues to get stronger as she gets a Cho'Gath ulti on her Q as the game gets later and later. But this Victor on Unopened, if you're already struggling, in the laning phase with a Jinx that has some range and a little bit of defensive options, now those have been lessened and you're up against a potentially even more aggressive bot lane. While you won't be experiencing the Karma poke, I think this Jinx, if she lands a zap, if she lands some chompers, that Victor is gone.
Yeah, and I think there is maybe a little bit trying too hard to change things up. Like, here's my issue, right? Victor wants to kind of stay back, poke in these games, poke in these fights. Same with Zilean in a lot of ways, kind of wants to control space and stuff. But Camille and Viego just like, I want to go in. I want to get damage done. I want to get flanks. I want to get resets, that kind of stuff. And it's kind of now the split identity for them, whereas they have a very strong front-to-back team fight available now for Manhattan. And I think the simplicity of how that style works, along with the potency of their champions, is going to allow them to just, in that mid game in particular, really take over. And
that front to back, it's just the bread and butter of so many of these teams.
I mean, it's the simplest way to play the game, right? It's the simplest way to play in terms of it doesn't rely on vision control around extremities. It doesn't rely on good flank timings. It doesn't rely on good coordination in terms of ability usage. It's very simple. I'm going to have my tank stand in the front, my carry stand in the back, and my Lulu's going to help them. Right? It's so much simpler to pull off, and it's kind of the issue we saw last time where one team was playing this pokier style and the other team was just trying to play a front-to-back when they don't have front-to-back comp. And they had to play a different style, and they couldn't. So they were just defaulting to front-to-back, and that doesn't work a lot of the time. But you have a composition now that completely supports that. For Manhattan, they have anti-dive in terms of the Shen. Not only Shen ult, but also Shen W. I mean, that area where they basically like, you aren't touching my team or me is extremely strong against Camille. So I'm going to be real. I think Fairfield will put themselves at a deficit to start this one out, and they're going to have to bring themselves out of it, which we've already seen them drop a lead. So can they come back a lead? That would be very counterintuitive to what you would think would happen, right?
I mean, yeah, I think this is going to be very much an uphill battle for Fairfield, and I like how you brought up the Shen ulti, and while yes, it has been nerfed, it's not always the giant shield, at level 6 that we were used to before the teleports were locked away and only get unleashed at 14 minutes. Shen did receive some nerfs there, but that anti-dive really feels like the only way that Fairfield can win fights. You have this Camille hookshotting onto a carry, or you have a big Morgana binding land, and either of those instances, Stand United can shield you long enough for the Shen to take the place of whoever is getting dove, and it completely shuts down how you want to play that team fight.
Completely shuts it down indeed. And I will be interested to see how they play this. I think they want to play towards maybe shutting down that top side, in terms of letting their bot lane kind of play safe and scale, hopefully, but we saw how that went last time.
Yeah,
and especially into a lane that's like, people I think underestimate how bully lane a Jinx Lulu can be into a lane with lesser range than them. It is rough, and even with those Jinx nerfs, they still gonna have more range than your Victor Morgana. So I hope they have a fun time down there, because I would imagine that Jason Woods and are not gonna let them have a fun time at all.
Yeah, I don't think they will either. I don't think Jason Woods and Josh are going to let them have a good time at all. If Grifter starts to camp this bot side, if this Jinx is forced to get her first item at, the 15-16 minute mark, maybe that's a world that Fairfield can play in, and they can make it work, because this does feel like a put all of the eggs in the Jinx basket. I mean, there is still a Cassiopeia you have to be afraid of.
Yeah, they Cassio.
Most of the eggs feel like they're in this Jinx basket, and if you can deny that, then maybe you can just put all of your dive onto the Cassio. I feel like if you get rid of either the Jinx or the Cassio, then you can just dive the other. Deny their early game, prevent them from scaling, kill the other. Yeah. Maybe you can clean up. It's still tough. It is still tough. It's
just dive the other.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only thing I can really think of that allows for Fairfield to use their comp's identity in the way that they've drafted it to.
Yeah. We'll end up seeing how they want to play that in those mid-game team fights. First, it's going to start the early game. And again, I think it's going to be try to help Camille and your Zillion in these mid top lane. You even have an exhaust in this. Okay, this Cassio's not. These carries are not dying. They have 2 exhausts. They have a Shen. They have a Lulu. Like, they are not dying in these team fights. I don't know how it's going to happen, but we'll end up seeing, especially when the only follow-up to a Camille going in is going to be your Viego, which is not really what you want to see. But I mean, anything can happen right now, and I think I like the idea of like a 2-threat comp with the Cassio Jinx. If it was a 1-threat comp, like if it was like what I thought Manhattan's comp was last time, where the 1-threat was only the Darius, which it should have been, unless Jason Woods was 20k gold ahead at any point. But where like you can shut down the Darius and then you kind of just win. But right here, even if you shut down the Jinx, the Cassio can pop off. If you did shut down the Cassio, Jinx can pop off. So 2-threat comps are typically the really good right now. 2 to 3 threat comps are kind of preferred right now.
Yeah, and I mean, one person we haven't talked about really at all this series has been Steffo, but I feel like Steffo's positioning last game on the Poppy was really integral to how Fairfield just felt completely shut out of trying to enter some of these fights, denying the Wind Becomes Lightning and that dash when Grifter was on that Xin Zhao. And now on the Trundle, Camille jumps in, subjugate, bye-bye stats, bye-bye Camille. And you also have to think of this Trundle potentially becoming a threat of his own for Unopened, for Laughing at Onions, for even Grifter. If you're in this 1v1 setting and Trundle can just slap away at you with this lethal tempo, it is a scary place to be.
Yeah, it's going to be lethal tempo, not PTA. A lot of times I like PTA. It's like PTA or phase rush into certain matchups where you need to run away, and then PTA into matchups where you want to just duel them. Lethal tempo is kind of like that. It's kind of like PTA, just a little bit just more I'm hitting you, less so than I'm one-shotting you with my Q. But it's gonna be interesting. Already seeing right here, Unopened has to walk up very far to get these minions. I don't know why they're playing so scared of this Morgana and Victor. I think they could actually just walk up and start just beating them up with auto attacks. Even Bazan Josh, I think people under how much damage Lulu ends up doing in this early game. Is quite the bully against supports like this Morgana, even, who is the sort of range, no threat outside of that Dark Binding.
Yeah, I mean, Pix can do so much extra work for you and can just give you so much unexpected damage.
Pix is broken, bro.
Yeah, Pix
is crazy.
Broken, Riot removed from the game, but I mean,
no,
we're
Pix
already
is
seeing
insane
it.
how much damage it gives Lulu.
Just look at the bot lane health bars. Look at Unopen's health bar. It was at half already, forced out 2 corrupting pots, procs, and I mean, it just goes to show the strength of this bot side, and we're seeing complete pressure and control out of Manhattan, and this is what we expected. We saw it when they had the Jhin last game, and we're going to continue to see it with the Jinx Lulu this game.
And Viego's pathing away from them, right? Viego pathed away from bot lane, so no aid there. Yeah, they're at your tier 1, and typically this is a mistake if the jungler shows up. Jungler's not there to help you. Actually, I'm going for a lane gank in top, it looks like. Already pushed up into that first bush. Looking into the alcove, there it is. They're looking for something here. They have the stun, but Shen not only has the disengage with his dash, but also the flash as well. Don't know if they got in there unnoticed. Godsent is playing this pretty scared, not walking up for the grass block, but there is no angle. There's no angle, and now you've wasted time. That's going to allow Trundle to get the Scuttle Crab as well. That might be a mistake. You get double Scuttle for this.
Yeah, probably will get double scuttled. Here's Grifter is so far away from that
Here's
bot scuttle. There's no bot lane pressure to sort of push Steffo away. So early wins all going the way of Manhattan. I mean, this mid lane, about what we expected. Darezo and Onions just sort of looking at each other, saying hi, throwing abilities at each other. But again, look, Steffo is able to get complete river control here as, you know, Onions is going to spot out that he took the scuttle, but at the very least, there is a bit of a consolation prize for Grifter in Steffo's Krugs.
Level 1 Krugs, let's go. You know, it's like, I got double scuttle, and my bot lane is getting pushed on the chirp, but I got his Krugs, guys. It's fine. I'm winning jungle. I'm invading. No, that's literally what you say. Like, I'm invading, guys. I'm invading. I'm counter jungling. It's fine. Yeah, this matchup isn't great for Shen, but you really don't have a lot of matchups that are great for Shen. But what's great for Shen is that he's not really going to be pressured too heavily in this game. I don't think he dies in this lane. It just is a little bit of like, they trade with Q on Camille, and then you take a lot of damage, but then you have sustain, you have resolve, you have Doran shield. Like, you have plenty of time, and Manhattan here is fine with letting the Shen kind of be the brunt of the aggression here from Grifter and Wereford. We saw it last time in terms of Godsend getting kind of ganked a bunch on Darius. Didn't seem to mind it too much in the end. Yeah.
Didn't seem to mind it too much at all. One thing that is a little interesting is Godsent currently has Ignite, which is, I don't know, I feel like you're not going to have any kill pressure, so unless this is just like a late game Grievous Wounds tech, I feel like you're going Bramble Vest anyway. I would rather just see a teleport on the Shen, honestly.
You know, you say that until Godsent pulls out the 1v2 to outplay because of Ignite, but
true, that's going to happen. I'm going to eat my words.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's like you said, teleport's typically better if you're not just perma fighting in lanes. A lot of time in solo queue, it's better to take Ignite just because you're going to be perma fighting, and that's going to allow you to get advantages. But good teleport usage in lanes that aren't resulting in like massive scrambles, teleport's typically better. And I'm actually surprised they went exhaust from Cassio into like a Zillion Victor kind of composition. I mean, yeah, you have obviously dive threat from Camille and Viego, but that's going to be in like the mid to late game, and I feel like you don't really need it much then, but we'll end up seeing if it gets much use. I mean, it is going to definitely help in the mid game. Like, if those fights come down, the Camille's checking on Cassio, they are doing no damage, right? So, that's a bit rough.
No, I think it's very much this isn't for lane, this isn't for anything to do with the early game. This is just, when we're getting dove by Camille and Viego, I think Aderzo wants the agency to shut down that threat.
Yeah, and I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how Manhattan tries to keep controlling this dragon, right? Because they're going to have push in this lane, I think, permanently. Viego has considerably decided to just stay away from it, which I think is a pretty correct decision. It's pretty hard to gank. Actually, I think it's easier to gank than most if misplays come out from Bazan, Josh, and Jason. But they already have vision. They should have vision pushed up to that tri-bush at this point, but I mean, they have a Trundle in the red, so they know if that vehicle's coming, right? So don't really need that tri-bush wood just yet. But still, I mean, again, we're counting the jungling, guys. We're getting his Krugs again. But does Steffo make it back for his red, you know, is the real important thing.
Yeah. And I mean, double Krugs. Got him twice. But again, very little map pressure being exuded by this Viego. Has hit level 6, and considering how far pushed up Godsent is, I wouldn't mind just trying to pressure this lane. It's the only lane that Shen can't stand united to, and Grifter is just going to back here. Likely does have some major components available now, so we'll see exactly what picks up. Yeah, the Sheen and the Caulfield's Warhammer. It's a pretty big power spike, especially if you're looking to really start impacting these lanes and you want to be that extra oomph of damage, especially looking towards the spot side where a 30 CS lead has already opened up for Jason Woods.
Already opened up indeed, and here it is. Godson's going to catch this top wave, and Wherefore it should be able to just walk back. Doesn't even have to use the TP. That's kind of your dream situation. Don't miss the cannon. Very good. We get those cannons. We take those, and now we're just going to collect that. And again, very non-aggressive top side here, or non-fighty top side here. Because of how pushed Wherefore it is, Grifter you can't dive a Shen. You can never dive a Shen, really, with cooldowns up, unless they're like 1 HP, but yeah, so.
Yeah, I was going to say, you really should never be diving a Shen unless you literally saw him try to jump forward with a taunt, and it's still within the early game where it's on like an 18-second cooldown. Because later on, it gets pretty low, if I'm not mistaken. It's on like 8 seconds.
No way we're doing this.
No way. Steffo gets the Stand United. I will say, though, there is the Zillion on the way round, but now it's the 3v4. Grifter about to fall, does stay alive, but not for long. Has that Blast Plant taken away, and Steffo does not go down. Derzo brings the damage, and 2 kills quickly go the way of Manhattan, as well as this Herald.
And we're seeing the opposite of what happened last time. Instead of Grifter getting those early 3 picks, we instead have them taking a loss here at this Rift Hill. I said at the very beginning, there's no way you do this. That is not a winning angle. You have a Shen coming back with your ultimate. You have Cassio who could match the Zillion. You have a Lulu who has roamed up here because of the pressure that a solo Jinx is putting on them. Jason was, by the way, alone in the bot lane and has pushed them under their turret alone. Okay, the flash comes out though
from Mauricia. I like this. The chains go down. This could be a kill, punishing mid over aggression, unopened, finding Jason Woods, and a nice few augments to go along with it. Yeah,
my bad.
Caster Curse. Indeed.
My bad, Jason. My bad.
Yeah, you have to apologize directly to Jason Woods for that one. But again, finding this kill in the bot lane, yes, it was some over aggression from Jason Woods, but the net map advantage is so heavily in favor of Manhattan that 1 kill on your Victor is not going to outweigh, you know, plate gold coming from this Herald.
Yeah, and the value you got from your Lulu being up there anyways, right? So we'll end up seeing how this does end up going. I would have liked, actually, and this again, boots are pretty good items in terms of how much stats they give you early on. I feel like if you just pick up plated steel caps there, you never die to this top jungle ever, because you're gonna have so much armor, and you pick up something like a bramble vest maybe if you really felt like it, unless this Lulu's rushing putrefier, and then you are just being chilling, as they say, and you are not going to be under any threat, especially if you're just hugging turret like you've been so far. This Camille has been pushing and pushing and pushing, so it should be very easy for them to kind of just neutralize this top lane, which is what Shen loves to do: neutralize top lane, have impact in teamfights.
Yeah, and is certainly doing that. Has fallen behind by about 15 CS, but that's expected up against a Camille. And the fact of the matter is those 2 assists pretty much make up for that gold discrepancy. And you will have so much more value when you're looking at positions like this. Steffo looking to get this bot lane further and further ahead, bringing Herald down. We'll say this is a little bit early on the drop. There's no wave here to work with it, so it's just going to be 320 gold going into Steffo's pocket, but it could lead to first turret getting over to Jason Woods.
No local gold picked up there, I don't believe. So
the Herald gives the jungler the local gold.
That gives them? Okay, I was going to say, I was like,
yes.
I didn't know if that happened with...
As a jungler, I regularly do that.
I mean, like, I feel like I would have really loved to see Jinx there, right? I feel like I really would have loved to see Jinx get that gold. You don't really need the Jinx to walk up for Dragon. I think you really can't just solo that as Trundle at this point in the game. Especially when they're going early Tiamat into a Divine Sunder, it looks like. That he could definitely solo that himself with the Lulu, even if they just needed it. But I think getting more gold in this Jinx's pocket is never a bad thing. Getting them online for what I believe is going to be a Kraken Slayer. Could easily be a Gale Force angle, though, here. You're going to have a lot of things to dodge. Bindings, bombs, Camille E's. There's a lot of stuff to dodge with that Gale Force. So I think that could actually be a pretty good pickup for them.
Yeah, I was gonna say rather the Gale Force, but Onion's forced to run away from Aderzo on that Cassio. And again, I mean, the Gale Force is sort of there's no tanks, but won't even be able to talk about this itemization as Steffo looking to run down Grifter, with them both being around the same item stage. Oh, Grifter, do not go back in. Gets the mist, gets the speed,
go in,
and sees the opponents. But another pick going over to unopened Jason Woods, assuming they're further ahead than they are.
Jason, brother, if your Lulu's rotating, you have to stay away from the enemy team right there. I mean, I feel like this is not something I'm not used to seeing from Jason. Like, normally Jason's really good at playing weak side, and right now they are kind of overextending over and over again, underestimating the damage on a Victor and Morgana. I mean, Morgana alone does so much damage, and then you add a Victor with First Strike in there. I don't know why they're kind of disrespecting the damage in a way, but ends up happening again. That is the one kind of saving grace so far for Fairfield, has been this Victor, and they have damage to kind of accompany it, right? They have Viego damage, Camille damage. Like, it's not just the Victor doing damage, but the Victor doing damage is going to be very helpful to them in these mid-game team fights, where I feel like they would have struggled more, but now there's a potential that unopened just kind of like takes over, you know?
Yeah, there is that potential. Just flat out picks up that Crown of the Shattered Queen. And that is a very big pickup as Werferoid gets sort of stalled out, and Steffo looking to finish things off with that taunt coming in from Godsent, the Hextech Ultimatum, not quite enough, and the flash forward chomp out of Steffo to find the kill onto the Camille as turret plates fall, teleports are unleashed, and bot lane, again, that first turret goes the way of Jason Woods, so continuing to keep this Jinx ahead, although not as ahead as I feel she really should be.
Yeah, well played. Gank in the top side. Jinx still ahead. I believe it's 16 CS is equal to a kill, if I'm not mistaken, or...
It's between 15 and 20, depending on cannons. And
depending on cannon. I'm assuming they picked up cannons, hopefully.
I just say like 17, 16-ish. It's all the same, but Onion's barely staying alive. Don't step back forward. Yes, Grifter is here to try and finish things off, but he might just fall to the minions. Forced to ulti himself. Doesn't go down. I mean, again, that is a pretty short cooldown ultimate, so... not going to be offline for too long, but still you never want to be in a position where minions are what's forcing that cooldown out.
Yeah, and yeah, like I was going to say, like Jinx is about even right now, right? Not even maybe ahead, not ahead, but like a bit even, and that's not bad considering they've given over 2 kills. They also got turret gold. You know, they got that turret gold picked up for themselves. They could have gotten plates, but they didn't because unfortunately didn't stick around for that, but is still a very good spot for them. 2.4k gold up for the entirety of Manhattan, mostly localized, and differences in the mid and jungle right now. And it has kind of allowed them to get all these objectives right now. So Riftail already picking up the second Riftail of the game at 15 minutes, and they already have 2 dragons, and the next one's coming up in just a minute. I'm assuming they will put this Herald mid lane as well to try and open up this map with the bot lane. Put your bot lane mid, get that Herald in there, and then you can kind of rotate your bot lane top if they want to, and then kind of flip it to try and get as much gold as possible into this Jinx's hands. That is always a good idea. And then just kind of rotate over to the dragon after the mid turret has fallen, or maybe do dragon into a mid turret kind of play. It depends.
Yeah, I agree. As Grifter, getting ran down by the minigun, does manage to escape. A black shield not really needed, but still there for some safety. Unopened here, though, does not have much mana available, is forced to back. And we're going to see the dragon setup for both of these teams as the Infernal spawning in just 20 seconds. And I would like to see Fairfield be the first ones, although with this mid-pressure and there's the Herald getting dropped, they have to respond here first before heading down to that Drake.
Yep, and here it is. They're going to actually do a mid-turret into Drake play. Not going to get the turret. Could also be dangerous for them. They got to back up. Zanjaw's under pressure, but they have so many resources to keep themselves alive. They're not going to press the go button just yet here for Fairfield. They're actually going to walk it off a little bit and try to play it a bit slow. They should be losing this dragon still. How do you walk into a Cassio W, right? It's going to be rough.
Yeah, it is going to be rough, but I would have liked to see Manhattan just immediately transition after dropping the Herald. Grifter still wanting to go forward. It's missed by the Super Mega Death Rocket, as now unopened, the one running forward. And actually, the steal away from Grifter as the Stand United I believe did get canceled, but Jason Woods is excited and is rocking and rolling all over this team. Steffo finds the kill from
and
the
the solo kill on top lane.
While Fairfield find some, they find the Drake steal. 4 kills go the way of Manhattan.
They get the dragon, so they delay the soul, but you lose 4-4. I would not say that's very worth it for Fairfield. And you saw the Camille look to cancel with Stand United there, but in doing so went under the turret of Shen, and so the Shen could kill them with Ignite. That's what the Ignite's for, right? And again, went for it. Still has Ignite up, and I've not seen them use it once. Yeah. I was right. Not 1v2, 1v1, but still same thing.
Still a dive where the Ignite was the difference maker, or at least something that helped along the way, so I will concede that one to you. And now Fairfield have just found themselves in a massive hole that I feel that hadn't been reflected in the gold or the towers, but was very palpable in how this game was playing out and the control that Manhattan was having over the map.
Yep. And this has been a more traditional Manhattan game in terms of how dominant they've been in the early game through their mid jungle. A lot of the time is what's going to happen. It's going to be Darzio and Steffo looking to help and impact top lane as much as possible to help Godsent. And that's kind of how it's been, right? Last game was very different. It was instead Grifter getting the better of Steffo. That doesn't typically happen. And we've kind of seen a return to form for them. And it has resulted in this game being, I would say, incredibly difficult for Fairfield, given the fact that the composition, in my opinion, will struggle into Manhattan's composition. And that could be it could just be over right now, right? Where they're already too far behind in gold, where they can't make up the difference in compositions with items. So that it could just be over, right? But we'll have to see how the execution does come down, because that's the most important part at the end of the day.
Yeah, it is, as we can take a peek at the gold. And one thing to note, a lot of the times when you see these, 6K gold leads, there's, 2 or 3K just all localized onto one player. But you could see that the spread was pretty even across the board, that just about every lane was about 1,000 to 1,500 gold ahead of their opponent. And when you're at that stage that the entire team is elevated, there's no one person that you can target to try and win these fights.
Yeah. And everyone works well in tandem as well. You have a lot of PL coming out from the Shen, Lulu, and even Cassio. The Cassio, I think, was a really good pick for them when they saw the Camille, Viego, and Zillion come out, because they were like, okay, they're going to want to run into us. What helps with that? Miasma is going to help a lot. This is going to be potentially a face check. I don't know if there's pings coming down, but they're definitely scared of the Fnatic death push. Okay, they're definitely afraid of that opportunity, possibility, and they are going to leave. There's the pings coming out. Now they're like, what are they doing in there? As the rotation is going to come topside, they want to get this turret and free up Godsent a little bit.
Yeah, I think they do, as Wherefore going to get caught by the chompers, and the Hextech ultimatum gets dropped, but the final swing of the sword goes the way of Godsent, as some great chompers placements from Jason Woods.
Jason knows how to play against Camille. I like to see that in the Jinx. Traps the wall, because they know Camille is going to be eating that way. Even if Camille is in mid-air, the chompers activate, they're going to get stuck right there. And that's going to be Jason Wood picking up that kill, basically, and allowing them to get this top side even more impacted. They could have transitioned that, but the bot lane does come up there from an open and Marisha, and they don't feel like trying to stay there any longer, especially when the Darzio could potentially be under threat in the bot lane. But instead, going to be resetting across the board. In fact, we got sent to respond to this bot lane. It looks like the bot lane here for Fairfield is just trying to, it's kind of running around at second place, right? They're trying to run around and match the Jason Woods and Bazanjos, but they're always a little bit behind. The resets are going to be a little bit behind, and this is going to allow them to get so much pressure over this dragon. And this is the big difference. Remember, when Fairfield would have had last game in the mid game, they didn't get this kind of vision control. They didn't have this, right? And this is what I'm saying that Manhattan can do in these mid games that teams like Niagara and Fairfield are failing at. It's these aggressive vision control plays in the enemy jungle to try and get a vision around before an objective comes up.
Yeah, and that vision control means that if you are further ahead in gold, if you have someone with some real blow-up potential, where if this Jinx and Cassio target one person, that person's off the map, immediately, as Unopen, already going low, gets hit by the pillar, but Grifter here to bail him out, as, again, there's just such trouble So it looks like we've got a bit of a scuffle to the top and mid laner. Derzo and Werferoid both trading spells, but Derzo on the better end of it forces Werferoid to back. This means it'll be a temporary 4v5. Remember, teleport is available, and Godsent does have Stand United. So all of these global and peel tools are available for these squads. Godsent now might just try and run straight into Fairfield. But this looks to be our first proper 5v5, and the taunt goes down onto the Victor on open, struggling against this pressure as Werferoid trying to stay alive. First kill goes down as Godsent takes out Grifter. Jason Woods on a killing spree, and that excited Jinx is too much to handle as Laughing at Onions, the last one standing. The double kill, maybe a triple. Jason Woods wants to follow, but instead Manhattan focuses on the Drake, focuses on the objective, and look to continue their path towards the finals.
Yeah, and it looks like it might be the end of the road here for Fairfield in the playoffs, and it might seem that Manhattan is destined to try and face off against Marist in the last round of playoffs and see if who can take that crown. But again, Marist still has to play the game. We'll kind of talk about its eventuality, but crazy things have happened. Again, I'm not gonna say crazier because that'd be pretty crazy if Niagara does end up beating Marist, but right now Manhattan is so far in control of this game. 10k gold lead, almost 9.5k gold lead. And there are very few teams in the world that could throw this outside of G2, perhaps. But
yeah, we've seen some pretty astronomical throws before out of teams like you mentioned, G2. You know, even the best can fall behind and fall down trying to be too safe. But I don't see Manhattan being that squad, and I don't see Fairfield punishing some of those potential mistakes. And you also have to remember, this is 23 minutes into the game, where 10k gold is a full item ahead. You know, it's not when you're late in the game, and 10k gold really isn't that big of a deal because the difference between 5.5 and 6 items. You know, you're still having enabled champions. Here it is a 2.5, not 2.5, a 2 3/4 item.
Jinx Cassio items look at zillion items. That'll explain the point.
Yeah, I mean, literally, just look at that 3-item Cassio, and look at the
1.5.
I don't know, garage sale that's in Onions' item inventory. Like, it's a very tough position to be in.
Yeah, and it just seems like an eventuality, right? You have Jinx where it's like the nerfs affected lane Jinx. Jinx had free lane. This Jinx is unaffected. This Jinx has not received any nerfs. This is the same Jinx we all know and has been dominating pro play. So it is incredible that we like this. Like, I don't know, it's so hard to talk about because it's like, how do they get back into this game? Well, it'd have to come off the back of Manhattan making mistakes right now. That's what it comes down to. At the end of the day, at this point in the game, the fate is out of your hands. You have to go for maybe some crazy plays. Hope it works. I mean, you're Victor storming a Binion buffed wave that isn't even a 2-wave stack, right? It's a 1-wave thing. So you are so far behind in this game. It's so hard to think about even coming back because it's just, it seems like an impossibility. Like, there are options. Maybe you get a fight off where they split, but right now, your Camille's gonna get dove. Your Camille might die here. Your Camille's dead, actually. Never mind. Werferoid's dead on my screen.
Camille is definitely going to go down to this dive, or maybe Manhattan are just going to prioritize the tower, as, yeah, the Hextech Ultimatum dropping the Steppo doesn't even matter. Too much damage, but it feels like the only way for Fairfield back into this game is to try and farm for maybe 1 item spike, for, you know, 2 item spike on this Victor and some crazy Chaos Storm, but again, it feels like the tanks are too big for Manhattan, and the damage dealers are not big enough for Fairfield.
Dude,
it is Demonic Embrace
Shen is crazy. I was ulted by Demonic Embrace Shen. I swear it was bugged. It felt like I had the shield of 2 shields. That's how big the shield was.
Yeah.
It was late game. Massive. I got ulted. It was like double my HP. Look at that shield. Look at that shield,
and there we see
man.
it. As Jason Woods has a massive HP bar, and Manhattan's return to form seen here as they are knocked on the Nexus of Fairfield, looking to take a 2-0 after fighting back in game 1 and never falling behind in game 2. Manhattan continue their streak of strength in MAAC and look to take on whoever wins next series in the finals.
I always like to just listen to the Nexus that's loading sometimes. It's a little satisfying noise. I don't hear it in my own games. I don't hear the victory screen much in my own games, so I have to live vicariously through college scenes, you know? But we're gonna see kind of what this team ends up doing the next round, because they're gonna go up against the winner of Niagara versus Marist. But right now, let's talk about this game where First match, we were like, man, Manhattan, we talked about this. You guys looked some shaky at times, you know? And they looked shaky in the first match, and we were like, is this a repeat of before where we saw them against Niagara and they lost a map because they were just a bit too overconfident going in? And then second map put all my doubts to shame. They were like, no, we're the same team as always. Just a rough start right there. We just didn't track jungle properly. But we are definitely set up to succeed and looking extremely strong. Now, we should be looking at some highlights here to try and get the points across about this game. From minute one, we see Fairfield kind of making these mistake fights. This is just a bad fight. Why? Like, you can't fight over that hill. You just end up dying there, getting 2 kills over to Manhattan, and that snowballs the game too far in their favor.
Yeah, and I mean, in this spot, Grifter, yes, gets a great steal, but when your entire team dies because of it, when Werferoid, instead of just responding to the Stand United with a TP, tries to dive under tower, now you've given more gold over to the Shen. Now you're hurting your potential split push, and then it just turns into fights like these where the carries on Manhattan are enabled, and there's really nothing that Fairfield can do that's all that effective against a 2-item Jinx, a 3-item Cassiopeia.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough time for any team to come back in this situation, just from comp differential, just from draft diff alone. And then when you go down that much gold that early in the game, I mean, yeah, obviously Jason Woods in the early was not playing that well in terms of their positioning. We're maybe giving them hope from an open, but I mean, how do you ever really rely on unopen to get value in these fights? They aren't going to have the range to contest the Jinx. They're going to have to get through Godsend, Steffo, and even a Derzio. That's just never going to happen.
Yeah, there just wasn't the damage present, and it really did. It was started in draft where there wasn't that clear answer, but then once you got to that first fight over Herald, it really just got the snowball rolling for the entirety of Manhattan, and once they had their foot on the gas, they never let up, and it showed in that 26-minute victory.
26 minutes is all it took for them to take that win. And I mean, now looking forward for Manhattan, right? They're going up against what they assume is Marist. I'm sure that the prep they're going to get in before tomorrow, right now, that's going to start maybe, is going to be for Marist. I would expect it to be that. We're going to be seeing them against Niagara afterwards, and we'll see if that ends up being one of the biggest upsets I've ever seen or ever had the opportunity to cast. That definitely would be it. But right now, I think they're definitely prepared for Marist. They've lost to them before. That's the only team they've lost to. And every time it's been 2-0, Marist has not lost a single map. And if we see the team like first map of Manhattan, it could just be over. But if we see second map Manhattan in all the games tomorrow, it could be pretty crazy.
Yeah, certainly could be pretty crazy, but we're going to see if Niagara can pull off the biggest upset in MAAC, or really LoL history here with this next series, but it'll be after about a 15-minute break, as we will be back with that series after this one.